The phone rang at 8:15 in the morning on a Wednesday. It was 7 months after they told me I wasn't needed anymore. Hello, Ms. Johnson. This is Maria Lopez from Mexico. We found a very big problem with Sunny Tech's safety papers. Can we talk? I was drinking hot chocolate in my small office above Pete's Pizza Shop. I could see the sun coming up over the buildings in Chicago. 7 months ago, I was the boss of keeping Sunny Tech safe and following all the rules. Now I was about to learn they made a huge $825 million mistake. My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm 48 years old. For 20 years, I've helped computer companies follow important safety rules. Before that, I was a firefighter for 15 years. I made sure buildings were safe so people wouldn't get hurt. It's kind of the same job, just different places. When things break in a burning building, people can get hurt. When rule following breaks in a company, the whole company can get hurt really badly. The day this whole mess started was a Wednesday too. A woman named Madison Taylor walked into our meeting about keeping workers safe. She called my team old-fashioned people who do things the slow way. Right then, I knew Sunny Tech was heading for big trouble. Madison had that look of someone who just got out of fancy business school. She wore expensive clothes, had perfect fingernails, and acted like she knew everything. But really, she had never failed at anything important before. She was the boss's daughter. Her dad just made her the chief of making things modern or something like that. Sunny Tech had been making computer parts for 67 years, and now his daughter was going to fix everything. Madison didn't shake hands when we met. She just waved her fingers at me and talked about using computers to watch our safety rules while drinking a fancy $15 smoothie. She acted like she invented the idea of being smart. Nobody asked her to talk that day, but nobody stopped her either. She showed us a PowerPoint presentation called Getting Rid of Old Ways, Step 1. Step 1 was getting rid of my whole team. I had been Sunny Tech's main safety rule person for 10 years. That's 10 years of making safety rules from the beginning, 10 years of watching new rules come in, 10 years of writing down every bad thing that could happen so we could stop it. I had passed 3 big safety checks with 0 problems. My filing cabinets were organized like a fire station. Everything had labels, dates, and was easy to find. I learned that from being a firefighter. When seconds matter, you need to know where everything is. Madison didn't even know what half the safety rules meant. I watched her look them up on her phone during the meeting. That morning, she stood there smiling. She said safety rule checking was old-fashioned and something we don't need anymore. She said we could let computers watch everything instead. She said my job was extra and cost too much money. My salary was $95,000 a year, plus $18,000 for health insurance. Getting rid of me would save them $113,000 every year, she said proudly. That's enough money to make better commercials. Someone actually clapped their hands. I didn't clap. I just closed my notebook and asked, "Are we done?" Madison left with her papers and a happy smile. I went back to my office and got out a fresh binder. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even really surprised. It was just what I learned to do as a firefighter. When someone is about to make a dangerous mistake, you write everything down and get ready to help when things go wrong. I started saving copies of everything. Every password, every safety paper that had my name on it, every legal paper that said I was the person in charge. Most people at Sunny Tech didn't know something important. All our safety rules still needed my name on them. Every 3 months, we had to send in safety papers. Every safety check, every report, they all had Sarah Johnson listed as the person in charge. Nobody else could take my place without the big bosses having a meeting and filling out special papers within 21 days. That means 3 weeks. But Madison didn't know that. Her dad, Tom, the big boss, probably didn't either. At first, I thought someone would say, "Wait, stop." Maybe the people in charge of hiring would be worried. Maybe Tom, who once said I was the person who keeps us out of jail, would speak up. But nothing happened. 4 days later, they sent me papers about my new job. My new title was office helper. They took away my special passwords. They stopped inviting me to important meetings. I just nodded. I didn't complain. I even said congratulations to Madison when she bragged about saving money. She gave me a thumbs up and started calling me Sarah J. So I printed out the original safety paper, the one that said I was in charge. The big bosses had signed it in 2018. I emailed it to my home computer so I'd always have it. Then I printed 2 copies. One copy went into my filing cabinet at home. The other went into a binder I labeled Safety Rules Keep Forever. I quietly put it on a shelf in the legal paper room at Sunnytech, 4th shelf on the left side. I didn't tell anyone. You see, people think getting revenge means yelling and slamming doors and making big speeches about how unfair everything is. But that's not how it works. The real trick was hiding in section 12.3 of our What to Do When Things Go Wrong plan. I had added that part 3 years ago after I watched another company get in huge trouble. They had to pay $6.8 million because they didn't properly replace their safety person. The rule said, if you change who's in charge of safety, the big bosses have to have a meeting and fill out papers within 21 days. If they don't, it's like having no safety person at all starting from day 1. Safety fines for computer companies start at $22,000 per day for small problems. After 90 days, that's 3 months, they jump up to $48,000 per day. The math gets really, really bad, really fast. Madison had no idea. The legal people didn't check. Tom just signed the papers about saving money without reading the details. 8 weeks after they changed my job, I quit. I wrote a simple letter. Starting in 2 weeks, I won't work at Sunnytech anymore. Thank you. That's it. No drama, no yelling, no company-wide email about how they didn't appreciate me. They treated it like normal paperwork. They turned off my computer password by the end of the day. The computer people were in such a hurry they spelled my name wrong and forgot to update the safety list. My daughter Emma called that night. She's 19 and goes to college studying computer science. Smart kid, smarter than me in a lot of ways. She got my careful attention to detail, though. Mom, are you sure about this? What about helping me with college? Spring classes are starting soon. Trust me, sweetie, this is going to work out fine. Your mom didn't spend 15 years as a firefighter without learning how to plan ahead. Sounds like you have a secret plan. I'm just following the proper rules. Sometimes that's all you need to do. Emma had been teasing me about being too strict with rules. She called me old school more than once. I didn't argue. Kids her age think having lots of experience just means you're stuck in the past. She'd understand someday. That weekend, I updated my professional profile online. I wrote that I was available as an independent safety expert who helps companies in big trouble. 24 hours later, my phone started ringing like crazy. By Monday, I had 4 serious job offers. 2 from lawyer offices representing companies in safety trouble, 1 from a small consulting company, and 1 from a Mexican technology company that buys American computer companies. That last one made me smile. Across town, Sunnytech kept working like nothing was wrong. No exit meetings, no training for whoever would replace me, no replacement at all. Madison was already planning step 2 of her money-saving plan. Tom started talking about how modern and quick the company was now. Nobody noticed the safety rule clock ticking toward day 22. I set up my office in a small space above Pete's Pizza on Main Street. 2 desks, a coffee maker that only worked sometimes, and a view of the Chicago River. Rent was $1,100 a month. My first consulting job paid me $385 per hour. The math worked way better than my old salary. Every morning I'd walk downstairs and get coffee from Pete. He's an old firefighter who ran the pizza place for 28 years. We'd talk about the Cubs, the weather, sometimes about work. He knew I left Sunnytech but didn't ask too many questions. Firefighters understand when someone doesn't want to talk about work stuff. "How's the consulting business?" Pete asked me one morning, pouring me fresh coffee. "Can't complain. Turns out lots of companies don't know what they don't know." Always true. My grandpa used to say, the most dangerous thing in business is someone who thinks they're smarter than their own rules. Pete was right.
The problem with people like Madison is they think rules are just suggestions. When I was a firefighter, we had a saying, rules are written in blood. Every rule exists because someone, somewhere, learned the hard way what happens when you don't follow them. Day 43 of Sunny Tech's safety rule violation. Nobody there knew they were breaking the law, but I knew. I had a calendar on my wall with a big red X on every day since I left. I got a call from a computer chip company in California. Their safety person had quit without telling anyone, and they had government inspectors coming in 6 weeks. They were in panic mode. "Ms. Johnson, we're in really big trouble here." Their manager told me on the phone. His voice was shaky, like he was really scared. "Our safety lady left everything a huge mess. Papers everywhere. Important certificates expired. Nobody knows what we're supposed to send to the government or when." "Sir, that's exactly the kind of problem I fix. I can have your papers organized and ready for inspection in 3 weeks. You're sure you can do that?" "I spent 15 years keeping people safe in burning buildings, sir. I am sure." I quoted them $425 per hour plus travel costs for 4 weeks of emergency work. They said yes before I even finished talking. The money was rolling in now, way more than Sunny Tech ever paid me. Day 67, I was on an airplane to Texas helping a computer factory deal with environmental inspectors. Their previous safety team had missed an important deadline. They could be fined millions of dollars. My job was to rebuild all their paperwork and prove they really were trying to follow the rules. Same skills I learned as a firefighter, just a different kind of emergency. Emma called while I was in Dallas. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you said about planning ahead and following rules." "What about it?" "Well, I was looking at some of the safety engineering programs here at college. My professors are saying it's a job that will always be needed. Good salary, too." I smiled. My mom might have mentioned that once or twice. "Yeah, you did. I'm thinking about adding extra classes in technology safety. What do you think?" "I think that's really smart planning, sweetie. It's always good to have skills that companies actually need." "Speaking of that, have you heard anything from your old job?" "Nothing worth talking about." Day 89. The expensive fine structure kicked in for Sunny Tech, but nobody there knew it yet. Safety violations for computer companies get way more expensive after 90 days. The daily penalty jumped from $22,000 to $48,000. Still invisible, still adding up, still counting backward to day 22 when they should have replaced me. I was back in Chicago when Pete mentioned he'd heard some gossip. Word is, Sunny Tech has some kind of big deal happening. Mexican company looking to buy them. Is that so? Yeah, Tom Patterson was in here last week bragging about it, said they were all going to be millionaires selling the company for crazy money. I drank my coffee and watched boats going down the Chicago River. "Funny how things work out," I said quietly. Day 95. Emma called with exciting news. She'd been accepted into the college's special safety engineering program. New field, lots of job openings, really good starting pay. Guess who inspired me? Your mom's rubbing off on you. More like I realized there's job security and keeping people out of trouble. Plus, the starting salaries are like $85,000 a year right out of college. Smart thinking. Companies always need people who know how to follow the rules. Speaking of that, have you heard anything from your old job? Nothing worth talking about. Day 120. Sunny Tech announced the deal of the century. The press release went out at 10 o'clock in the morning. Sunny Tech Computer Systems to be acquired by Technomex Solutions for $825 million. The story made the front page of the Chicago Business News. Tom was quoted talking about Sunny Tech's amazing modern transformation under new leadership. Madison was quoted too. She positioned herself as the genius behind Sunny Tech's lean operation model that made the Mexican company want to buy them. The article mentioned her smart elimination of outdated jobs as a key reason Technomex was interested.
I read it while drinking my morning coffee at Pete's. The old firefighter saw me smiling at the newspaper. "Good news?" he asked. "You could say that. Sometimes patience pays off. Pete looked at the headline. That's your old company. Used to be. $825 million. That's serious money. Sure is. I folded the paper and finished my coffee. Wonder if they checked all their safety papers properly. Pete gave me a knowing look. Firefighters recognize that tone. Sounds like maybe they didn't? Well, that would be their problem, wouldn't it? Day 135. The Technomex Solutions inspection team arrived in Chicago. Professional, careful, and led by Dr. Sophia Martinez, who spoke 4 languages and had the kind of attention to detail that made her legendary in the industry. Her team included Maria Lopez, a safety rule specialist who'd spent 18 years checking American companies for Mexican buyers. Emma called that evening, excited about the news. "Mom, did you see your old companies getting bought? $825 million? Yeah, I saw. That's crazy money. Do you think they'll keep all the workers? Hard to say, sweetie. These international buyouts, sometimes they keep everyone, sometimes they don't. Kinda weird timing though, right? I mean, they just changed everything, got rid of you and your team, and now suddenly they're worth almost $1 billion? Smart kid. Funny how that works out. You don't sound surprised, Mom. I learned a long time ago that in business, timing is everything. Sometimes companies get lucky. Sometimes they don't. The Technomex team spent their first week looking at financial records, how the factory ran, and safety protocols. Everything looked clean. Madison had prepared beautiful presentations about streamlined operations and reduced costs. The numbers looked impressive. The timeline was fast. Tom had already started talking about integration plans. The Technomex executives were optimistic. This looked exactly like the kind of efficient American company they wanted to buy. Sunnytech's management team was confident. The lawyers had reviewed everything twice. The deal was scheduled to close in 2 weeks. But I knew something they didn't. Maria Lopez wasn't just any safety specialist. This woman had a reputation in the industry. Mexican companies don't mess around when it comes to safety rules. They'd learned the hard way that American companies sometimes had nasty surprises buried in their paperwork. Day 140. Pete mentioned he'd seen some foreign-looking business people in suits around town. Mexicans, I told him. Inspection team. They buying Sunnytech? Trying to. You think it'll go through? I shrugged. Depends on what they find when they start digging. Day 145. Emma called again. She'd been following the story in the local business news. Mom, I've been reading about this Technomex deal. My professors are saying it's a big deal for Chicago. Lots of jobs at stake. That's usually how these things work. Did you ever deal with international safety stuff when you worked there? Some. Mexican companies are pretty thorough. They don't like surprises. What kind of surprises? Oh, you know, paperwork that's not filed right, certificates that aren't up to date, procedures that aren't being followed, stuff like that. Could that kill a deal? Sweetie, I've seen deals twice this size fall apart over a missing signature. Emma was quiet for a moment. Mom, when you left Sunnytech, everything was in order, right? Everything I was responsible for was documented properly. Can't speak for what happened after I left. There was a long pause. Mom, how much trouble are they in? I don't know yet, but we'll find out soon. Day 147. Maria Lopez was deep into the safety rule review. Technomex's legal team had given her a checklist of things that needed checking. Standard stuff. Environmental permits, safety certificates, federal compliance papers, the kind of paperwork most American companies kept in good order. Most companies. Day 148, Maria was in Sunny Tech's legal storage room checking regulatory papers against personnel records. Routine inspection, nothing unusual. She wasn't looking for problems, just verifying that all certificates were current and properly maintained. That's when she found my binder, fourth shelf left side, exactly where I'd left it 5 months earlier. Safety rules, keep forever. Now, Maria had seen a lot of American companies' filing systems. Some were good, some were okay, most were barely acceptable. But this binder was different. It was organized like a fire station. Every document labeled, cross-referenced, dated. Professional-grade work. She opened it and started reading. The original safety designation letter, the business continuity plan with Section 12.3 highlighted, the timeline requirements, the board resolution from 2018 that was never replaced. Maria spent 2 hours going through every document. Then, she checked the dates against Sunny Tech's current safety registry. Then she pulled out her calculator. The numbers were simple and terrible. Day 22 through day 148 was 126 days of safety violations. The first 90 days at $22,000 per day was $1,980,000. Remaining 36 days at $48,000 per day was $1,728,000. Total exposure, $3,708,000. And climbing at $48,000 per day until fixed. But it got worse. Because no replacement had been named, every safety paper, every certificate, every compliance document submitted during those 126 days was legally invalid. Sunny Tech had been lying about its safety status to customers, insurance companies, and potential buyers for over 4 months, including Technomex Solutions. Maria called Dr. Martinez immediately. "We have a big problem," she said. "We need to talk to Sunny Tech's board right now."
Day 149, Thursday morning, 10:30 a.m. Maria Lopez walked into the Sunny Tech boardroom carrying a folder that would destroy everything Madison had built. "Who is Sarah Johnson?" she asked, setting the folder on the big conference table. Madison looked confused. "She used to work here. We restructured her position last year as part of our cost-saving plan." "But she is still listed as your named safety compliance officer," Maria said, opening the folder. "According to your federal registry and this documentation, she remains the designated authority for all safety filings." Tom leaned forward in his chair. "That's impossible. We handled her transition months ago." Maria wasn't smiling. "Where is the board resolution replacing her? The formal reassignment documentation? The updated federal notifications?" Silence. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Madison started typing frantically on her phone. Tom was already reaching for his phone. Legal people were called out of another meeting. HR scrambled to find records that didn't exist. "We assumed the transition was automatic when we restructured her role," someone from HR offered weakly. Her voice was shaky. Maria shook her head slowly. Federal safety designations are never automatic. They require explicit board action and formal replacement within 21 calendar days. You have been operating without valid safety authority for exactly 126 days. Dr. Martinez, who'd been quietly reviewing Maria's findings on her laptop, looked up. "This represents a material misrepresentation of safety standing during preliminary negotiations." The big words meant, "You lied to us during the deal talks." Madison tried to fix the situation. Her voice was getting higher and faster. "It's just paperwork. We can fix this in a day. Bring Sarah back, file the forms, move forward. Problem solved." "No," Dr. Martinez said firmly.
You cannot retroactively fix federal safety violations. Computer manufacturing safety fines escalate after 90 days. Your current exposure is $3,708,000, increasing by $48,000 daily. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Tom's face had gone white, like he'd seen a ghost. "Surely we can resolve this," he said. His hands were shaking. "It's just a procedural oversight, a mistake. Nobody meant for this to happen." Maria opened her laptop and turned the screen toward the table. "Your safety violations create significant liability exposure for any acquiring entity. But what's more concerning is the pattern of negligence." She clicked to show a document on the screen. Ms. Johnson left detailed documentation showing that proper procedures were available and ignored. Click Next slide. Section 12.3 of your own business continuity plan, authored by Ms. Johnson, explicitly outlines the 21-day requirement. This was not an oversight. This was willful ignorance. Madison's face was red now. Willful ignorance? We were modernizing, becoming efficient. This is just old-school bureaucracy getting in the way of progress. "Ms. Taylor," Dr. Martinez said coldly, "you eliminated the person responsible for keeping your company legally compliant, failed to properly replace her, and then misrepresented your compliance status to potential buyers. This is not innovation. This is negligence." Dr. Martinez closed her laptop slowly and deliberately. "This is a material breach of due diligence representations. We are terminating acquisition proceedings." Tom stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. "Dr. Martinez, surely we can work through this. The deal is scheduled to close next week. We have investors waiting, employees counting on this." "Mr. Patterson, your company has been operating in federal violation for over 4 months while representing full compliance to potential buyers. This creates unacceptable liability exposure for Technomex Solutions. We cannot and will not proceed." Madison's voice was almost a scream now. "This is ridiculous! Over some paperwork technicality? We're talking about an $825 million deal. You can't just walk away." Dr. Martinez stood up and gathered her materials. "Ms. Taylor, these paperwork technicalities, as you call them, represent $3.7 million in current fines and potential criminal liability for all parties involved. Technomex does not acquire companies with undisclosed regulatory violations. Good day." The Mexican team walked out. Madison tried to follow them, still talking, still trying to fix it. They didn't look back. That afternoon, Maria called me directly. Professional courtesy, she said. She wanted to understand the timeline of my departure and the transition procedures that should have been followed. I was in my office above Pete's Pizza, working on a safety manual for a client in Arizona. The call was expected. I'd been watching my calendar, counting the days, watching the violations add up like a ticking bomb. "Ms. Johnson, this is Maria Lopez from Technomex. We are reviewing Sunny Tech's regulatory standing as part of acquisition due diligence." "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" I gave her the dates. Restructured on day 1, resigned effective day 42, final day was day 56. I explained the proper procedures. I confirmed that no formal replacement had ever been designated. When she asked if I'd tried to notify Sunny Tech of the compliance gap, I mentioned the binder. Safety rules, keep forever. 4th shelf left side in legal storage. Should still be there. We found it. Very thorough documentation. Section 12.3 of the Business Continuity Plan appears to address this exact scenario. Yes, ma'am. I wrote that clause in 2019 after watching a competitor get hit with $6.8 million in fines for improper compliance handoff. Seemed like prudent risk management. There was a pause. Indeed. Are you currently available for consulting engagement? Depends on the scope and timeline. What did you have in mind? Day 150, Friday morning. Dr. Martinez called an emergency meeting. Tom, Madison, the board, legal counsel, everyone who mattered. She laid out the situation in terms that left no room for misunderstanding. Sunny Tech Computer Systems has been operating in violation of federal safety requirements for 126 days. The regulatory fines currently total $3,708,000 and increase by $48,000 daily. She paused to let that sink in. Furthermore, every compliance document submitted during this period is legally invalid. This includes safety certifications, environmental filings, and regulatory representations made to Technomex during preliminary negotiations. Tom's voice was barely a whisper. What does this mean for the acquisition? It means the acquisition is terminated, Dr. Martinez said flatly, effective immediately. Our legal team has identified material misrepresentation that creates unacceptable liability exposure for Technomex Solutions. The Technomex team was packed and gone by noon. Their final act was to formally notify Sunny Tech's board that due diligence had revealed material compliance violations and misrepresentation of regulatory standing. The lawyers used fancy words, but it basically meant, "You lied to us, we're out." The press release went out Monday morning. Technomex Solutions withdraws from Sunny Tech acquisition due to unresolved regulatory compliance issues. Sunny Tech stock opened down 23% and kept falling. By market close, it had dropped 38% in a single day. Investors lost hundreds of millions of dollars in a few hours. Tuesday morning, my phone rang again. Dr. Martinez, this time. Ms. Johnson, Technomex is interested in retaining your services for a comprehensive compliance review of our North American operations. 24-month contract, $385 per hour, full autonomy over methodology and timeline. Are you available?
I looked around my little office, the coffee maker that worked half the time, the view of the Chicago River, and a stack of consulting contracts that had tripled my old salary. Yes, ma'am, I'm available. Excellent. We need someone who understands that compliance is not optional, someone who documents properly, someone who knows the difference between efficiency and negligence. I appreciate that, Dr. Martinez. We'll send the contract details this afternoon. One more thing, Miss Johnson. Yes? That binder you left in their storage room, that was the most professional piece of documentation I've seen in 18 years of acquisition due diligence. Where did you learn to organize like that? 15 years as a firefighter, ma'am. When lives are on the line, you learn that details matter. Indeed, they do. Welcome to the Technomex family. Day 153. Wednesday afternoon. Tom Patterson announced his early retirement, effective immediately. The press release cited personal reasons and desire to spend time with family. Translation, he was being forced out before the lawsuits started flying. The board called an emergency meeting to discuss leadership transitions and operational restructuring. Madison was asked to submit her resignation by Friday. No press release for that one. She just disappeared. Her LinkedIn profile went private, her Twitter account went quiet. The woman who'd been bragging about streamlining operations and digital transformation just vanished. That weekend, Emma called. She was excited about her acceptance into the college's safety engineering program. She'd been following the Sunny Tech story in the business news. Mom, they're using this as a case study in my business law class. Professor says it's a perfect example of how cutting corners on compliance can destroy shareholder value. Is that so? Yeah. He asked if anyone knew what happened. I told him my mom used to work there. What did he say? He said,
I hope your mother documented everything properly before she left. I told him you're a former firefighter. He just smiled and said, then I'm sure she did. I laughed. Smart professor. Mom, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Did you know this was going to happen? Like, did you plan this? I thought about how to answer that. Sweetie, I didn't plan for them to make mistakes. I just planned for what would happen if they made mistakes. There's a difference. That's really smart, Mom. It's called contingency planning, something you learn when people's lives depend on you doing your job right. You know what's funny? I used to think you were too rigid about following rules, too old-fashioned. But now I'm thinking, maybe that's not such a bad thing. Smart thinking, sweetie. Rules exist for a reason, usually because someone learned the hard way what happens when you ignore them. Monday morning, Eddie poured me a fresh cup of coffee. Heard about your old company? Rock break for them. Some folks have to learn the hard way. Word gets around in this industry, Pete said, wiping down the counter. Company that fires their safety officer to save money. Other companies remember that kind of thing. Emma's right about job security. There's always demand for people who can keep companies out of trouble. How's business? Really good. Better than I ever imagined. Pete smiled. You know what my grandpa used to say? The best revenge is competence. You do your job so well that people realize what they lost. Your grandpa was a wise man. He also said, sometimes the best way to teach someone is to let them fail. Sounds like that's what happened here. I nodded. Sometimes people have to touch the hot stove before they believe you when you say it's hot. Day 160. The lawsuits started. First came the shareholders. They sued Tom, Madison, and the entire board for negligence and misrepresentation. They'd lost millions when the stock crashed. Then came the insurance companies. They'd been issuing policies based on false safety certifications. They wanted their money back, plus damages. Then came the federal regulators, the EPA, OSHA, the Federal Trade Commission, everyone who had letters after their name and the power to fine companies. Sunnytech was drowning in legal trouble. I read about it in the Chicago Business News while drinking coffee at Pete's. Looks like your old company's having a rough week, Pete said, refilling my cup. Rough month is more like it, and it's gonna get worse before it gets better. How much worse? Well, the fines alone are now over $4 million. Add in legal fees, shareholder lawsuits, regulatory investigations. I'd guess they're looking at $15 to $20 million in total damages. Whistle. All because they wanted to save $113,000 on your salary. Yep, that's what we call penny wise and pound foolish. Word spreads fast in the technology industry. Within 2 weeks, every major company in Chicago knew the story. The company that fired their safety officer to save money then lost an $825 million deal because of it. I started getting calls from companies I'd never even heard of. Miss Johnson, we just want to make sure our compliance documentation is in order. Miss Johnson, we're going through a restructuring and want to ensure we don't make the same mistakes. Miss Johnson, our board would like you to review our safety protocols. My consulting rate went from $385 per hour to $525 per hour. And people still said yes immediately. Day 175. I got a call from a reporter at the Chicago Tribune. Miss Johnson, I'm writing a story about the Sunnytech collapse. Would you be willing to comment? I'm afraid I can't discuss specific details due to confidentiality agreements. Can you speak generally about compliance procedures and what happens when companies don't follow them? I thought about it. This could be educational. Sure. Generally speaking, federal safety designations exist for a reason. They're not bureaucratic red tape. They're legal requirements that protect workers, customers, and shareholders. When companies treat these requirements as optional or outdated, they create enormous liability exposure. What would you say to companies considering restructuring their compliance departments? I'd say this: safety and compliance aren't cost centers, they're insurance policies. You might save money in the short term by cutting corners, but the long-term costs can be catastrophic. Ask yourself, is saving $100,000 worth risking $825 million? The article ran 3 days later with the headline, "The $825 million mistake when cost cutting goes too far." My phone didn't stop ringing for a week.
I heard through the grapevine that Madison had tried to start her own consulting business, digital transformation expert, according to her new website. It lasted 6 weeks. Nobody would hire her. The Sunny Tech disaster had destroyed her reputation. Every time a potential client Googled her name, the first 20 results were about the failed acquisition and her role in the compliance disaster. Her LinkedIn profile eventually disappeared entirely. Last I heard, she'd moved to Arizona to work for her mom's real estate business. Far away from the technology industry, far away from Chicago, far away from anyone who remembered. Tom Patterson's retirement was announced with typical corporate language about pursuing new opportunities and spending more time with family. The reality was uglier. The board had given him a choice: resign quietly and keep your retirement package, or be fired publicly and lose everything. He took the quiet exit. His reputation was ruined anyway. In industry circles, he became known as the CEO who destroyed $825 million by firing his compliance officer. Nobody wanted to hire him. Nobody wanted him on their board. Nobody even wanted him to consult. He'd built Sunny Tech over 30 years, and it all came crashing down in 7 months because he didn't stop his daughter from making a catastrophic mistake. Day 200. Sunny Tech was still operational, but barely. They'd hired an emergency compliance team at triple the cost of what they paid me. They'd filed all the proper paperwork. They'd paid the $4.2 million in fines, but the damage was done. Major customers started canceling contracts. Why risk doing business with a company that couldn't even keep its safety paperwork in order? Insurance premiums tripled. What insurance company wants to cover a business with a proven track record of compliance failures? The stock price never recovered. Investors had lost faith. The company that was worth $825 million a year ago was now worth maybe $200 million, and falling. Rumors started circulating that Sunny Tech might have to declare bankruptcy within the year, all because they wanted to save money on outdated support functions. Emma came home for Thanksgiving break. She'd been studying the Sunny Tech case in 3 different classes: business law, ethics and technology, and risk management. "Mom, you're like famous in my business school. Professors keep using this as an example of proper documentation and contingency planning." "That's nice, sweetie." "Nice? Mom, you're a case study. My risk management professor said, this is what happens when you have a professional who knows their job versus an amateur who thinks they're smarter than the rules." "What did you say?" "I said, that's my mom. The whole class wanted to know if you'd come speak." I laughed. "I'm not sure I'm ready to be a guest speaker." "Mom, you should do it. These kids need to understand that compliance isn't boring paperwork. It's protecting the company from disasters." "You've really changed your tune. You used to think I was too rigid about rules." Emma looked a bit embarrassed. "Yeah, well, watching your old company lose $825 million kind of changed my perspective. Turns out your rigid rule following was actually strategic risk management. Smart girl." My consulting business was exploding. The Technomex contract alone was paying me $385 per hour for 24 months. That's roughly $800,000 per year just from one client. But I had 5 other major clients now.
2 manufacturing companies, 1 pharmaceutical company, 1 aerospace contractor, and 1 financial services firm. All of them had heard about the SunnyTech disaster. All of them wanted to make absolutely sure it wouldn't happen to them. I hired 2 assistants to help manage the workload. Both were former firefighters who understood the importance of procedures and documentation. My little office above Pete's Pizza wasn't big enough anymore. I moved to a proper office building downtown. 3 rooms, a conference area, and a real coffee maker. But I still went to Pete's every morning for coffee. Old habits. Day 225. I was giving a presentation to a manufacturing company's board of directors. They'd paid me $15,000 for a 4-hour compliance review and recommendation session. The warning signs were all there, I told them. When someone calls your compliance department legacy overhead or outdated processes, that's a red flag. When someone suggests automating oversight without understanding what's being overseen, that's a red flag. When someone with no compliance experience starts making decisions about compliance procedures, that's a massive red flag. The board members were taking notes frantically. What SunnyTech's leadership failed to understand is that compliance isn't about following rules for the sake of rules. It's about understanding why those rules exist and what happens when you don't follow them. One board member raised his hand. Ms. Johnson, in your experience, what's the most common mistake companies make with compliance? They treat it as a cost center instead of risk management. They look at the salary and benefits and think, we're spending $113,000 a year on this person. They should be thinking, we're spending $113,000 a year to avoid $20 million in fines and losing an $825 million acquisition. Another board member spoke up. How do we know if our compliance officer is, well, as good as you were? Ask them to show you their contingency documentation. Ask them what happens if they leave. Ask them to explain the regulatory timeline requirements. If they can't answer immediately and show you organized documentation, you have a problem. The meeting ended with them offering me a $500,000 annual retainer to oversee their compliance programs. I accepted. That evening, I stopped by Pete's for coffee. The dinner rush was over, and he had time to chat. You know what's funny about this whole situation? Pete said, pouring 2 coffees. What's that? That company thought they were being smart, cutting costs, becoming efficient, modernizing. They probably felt really good about themselves. Madison certainly did. But they forgot the basic rule of business. You can't save your way to success. Eventually, you have to actually be good at what you do. Your grandpa again? Nah, that's my dad. He used to say, anyone can cut costs. It takes skill to create value. I sipped my coffee. Your family is full of wise people. We learned by watching. My dad watched his father build this pizza place from nothing. Grandpa never cut corners on ingredients, never skimped on training, never treated employees like expenses. He treated everything like an investment. That's exactly what compliance is, an investment in not failing catastrophically. Pete nodded. SunnyTech learned that the hard way. Question is, will anyone else learn from their example?
Over the next few months, something interesting happened. Companies across the country started strengthening their compliance departments. Job postings for compliance officers increased by 40%. Salaries went up. Respect for the position increased. The industry had learned a lesson, even if SunnyTech had to be the example. Business schools started teaching the SunnyTech case. It became required reading in risk management and corporate governance courses. The $825 million mistake became shorthand in the industry for what happens when you cut compliance corners. Madison Taylor's name became a cautionary tale. Don't pull a Madison Taylor meant don't fire your compliance officer without understanding what they actually do. Tom Patterson's legacy shifted from successful CEO to the guy who lost everything by not protecting his compliance infrastructure. And me? I became the go-to consultant for companies that wanted to bulletproof their compliance systems. Emma called me in mid-December.
Mom, I got offered a summer internship with Technomex in their compliance division. That's wonderful, sweetie. They specifically mentioned that being Sarah Johnson's daughter helped my application stand out. Is that weird? I laughed. Sweetie, that's called leveraging your network. Use every advantage you have. The internship pays $32 an hour. For a college student, that's amazing. It is. And you'll learn from some of the best people in the industry. Mom, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever feel bad about what happened to SunnyTech, like all those people who lost their jobs? I thought about that carefully. Sweetie, I feel bad for the innocent employees who suffered because of bad management decisions. But do I feel bad about the consequences falling on the people who made those decisions? No. Actions have consequences. They were warned through proper documentation and procedures, and they chose to ignore those warnings. So it's like natural consequences. Exactly. I didn't destroy SunnyTech. They destroyed themselves. I just made sure the evidence was clearly documented when they did. Day 365. Exactly 1 year since they restructured my position. I was sitting in my downtown office, looking at the Chicago skyline, thinking about how much had changed. My consulting firm, Johnson Compliance Solutions, now had 6 employees, 3 former firefighters, 2 former military officers, and 1 brilliant young woman fresh out of Emma's college program. Annual revenue? $2.3 million. My personal income? Roughly 4 times what I made at SunnyTech. But it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about respect, about understanding that experience matters, about knowing that rules exist for reasons and ignoring them has consequences. SunnyTech declared bankruptcy on day 287. The company that had been worth $825 million couldn't survive the combination of fines, lawsuits, lost contracts, and destroyed reputation. The factory closed. 340 people lost their jobs. Retirement funds evaporated. Years of work disappeared. All because someone thought saving $113,000 on a safety officer was a smart business decision. The building sits empty now, a for sale sign in the parking lot. Nobody wants to buy it. The name SunnyTech has become toxic in the industry. Sometimes I drive past it on my way to client meetings. It's a reminder, not of revenge, but of consequences. Emma asked me once if I felt responsible for those 240 people losing their jobs. Sweetie, the person responsible for those job losses is the person who created the liability that bankrupted the company. That wasn't me. That was Madison Taylor and Tom Patterson. But you could have warned them more clearly. I left them a binder with every warning they needed, filed properly in their legal storage. I wrote the procedures they needed to follow. I documented everything according to protocol. What more could I have done? Called the CEO and said, "Please don't fire me or your company will collapse"? That's not how professional transitions work. Emma nodded slowly. I guess you're right. You did your job. They didn't do theirs. Exactly. Madison Taylor never recovered professionally. The last I heard, she was working as a social media manager for her mom's real estate company in Scottsdale, Arizona, making about $45,000 a year. From chief innovation officer at a major manufacturing company to social media manager at a small real estate firm. Her LinkedIn profile, when she briefly reactivated it, no longer mentioned SunnyTech. She'd tried to erase that part of her career entirely. But the internet remembers everything. Google her name, and the first page is all articles about the SunnyTech disaster. The MBA who destroyed an $825 million deal. Cost-cutting gone catastrophically wrong. When innovation meets neglect. She'd tried to reinvent herself as a business consultant, but no one would hire her. Would you hire a consultant whose last big project resulted in company bankruptcy and 340 people losing their jobs? I don't hate Madison. I actually feel a bit sorry for her. She was young, overconfident, and genuinely believed she was helping the company. She just didn't understand what she didn't understand. That's the dangerous combination: confidence plus ignorance. Tom Patterson retired to Florida with whatever was left of his savings after the lawsuits. His reputation in the business world was completely destroyed. The man who'd built SunnyTech over 30 years would be remembered for destroying it in 7 months. Industry magazines had published profiles, The Fall of Tom Patterson, a cautionary tale about nepotism and oversight. He'd given his daughter a powerful position without proper training or experience. He'd signed off on major structural changes without understanding the legal implications. He'd prioritized short-term cost savings over long-term risk management. And it cost him everything. Last I heard, he was 67 years old, playing golf, and not returning calls from former business associates. I don't hate Tom either. He was a decent boss for many years. He just made one catastrophically bad decision, letting his daughter restructure departments she didn't understand. Every parent wants to help their kids succeed, but sometimes helping means teaching them to respect expertise, not giving them power over things they're not qualified to manage. The SunnyTech case changed how companies think about compliance. Business schools now teach it as a case study in risk management. The lesson? Don't treat compliance as optional overhead. Treat it as insurance against catastrophic failure. Major corporations rewrote their policies on restructuring compliance departments. Many now require board approval and external audits before making changes to compliance leadership. Job postings for compliance officers now emphasize experience and professional certifications. The days of treating it as an entry-level administrative role are over. Salaries increased industry-wide. Companies realized that paying a compliance officer $120,000 is a bargain compared to paying $20 million in fines and losing billion-dollar deals. The phrase pulling a SunnyTech became industry slang for making a catastrophically short-sighted cost-cutting decision. I'd turned one company's failure into an entire industry's learning moment. Emma graduated with honors in May with a dual degree in computer science and safety engineering. She had 6 job offers before graduation. All of them cited the SunnyTech case study and her understanding of real-world consequences of compliance failures. Being Sarah Johnson's daughter definitely helped, but Emma earned her success. She'd studied hard, learned the material, and understood the bigger picture. She accepted a position with Technomex at their Chicago headquarters, starting salary $92,000 per year plus benefits. At 22 years old,
Mom, I'm making almost as much as you did after 20 years of experience. That's because the industry learned what happens when they undervalue compliance expertise. You're benefiting from the lessons SunnyTech taught everyone. So in a weird way, Madison Taylor and Tom Patterson helps my career? I laughed. I guess you could say that, though I doubt they'd appreciate the irony. Emma started her job in June. By August, she'd already caught 2 potential compliance violations before they became problems. Her supervisor told her, "You have your mother's attention to detail. That's going to take you far in this industry." Emma called me that night, excited. "Mom, my boss complimented my documentation. Said it was the most thorough he'd seen from a new hire." "That's wonderful, sweetie. Where did you learn to document so thoroughly?" "From watching you. All those years I thought you were being overly cautious and paranoid. Turns out you were teaching me professional excellence." Through all of this, one thing remained constant: Pete's Pizza. Every morning, I still stopped by for coffee, even though I had a fancy coffee maker in my downtown office. Pete had watched the whole story unfold from his counter. He'd seen me arrive defeated, watched me build my business, and celebrated my success. "You know what I learned from watching you?" Pete asked one morning, pouring my usual coffee. "What's that?" "That revenge doesn't have to be mean. Sometimes the best revenge is just being really, really good at your job and letting other people's mistakes speak for themselves." "Your grandpa teach you that?" "Nah, that's all you. I watched you handle this whole situation with more class than most people handle a parking ticket. You didn't trash talk them online, didn't give angry interviews, didn't gloat. You just did your job properly and let the consequences play out naturally. That's how professionals operate. That's how people with actual character operate. Big difference."
Pete's son asked me once if I'd ever go back to working for a company full-time or if I'd stay independent. I'm staying independent, I told him. I like being the person companies call when they want to avoid disasters, not the person they blame when disasters happen. I'd started accepting speaking engagements. Universities wanted me to talk to business students. Industry conferences wanted me to present on risk management. Corporate boards wanted me to review their compliance structures. My standard speaking fee? $15,000 for a 1-hour presentation. People paid it gladly. At a conference in Boston, someone asked me, "Miss Johnson, do you think what happened to Sunny Tech was fair?" I thought carefully before answering. Fair is an interesting word. Was it fair that 340 innocent employees lost their jobs? No. Was it fair that shareholders lost hundreds of millions? No. But were the consequences proportional to the decisions made by leadership? Absolutely. They eliminated critical oversight, ignored proper procedures, and misrepresented their compliance status. The penalties for those actions are clearly defined in federal regulations. So, was it fair? Maybe not. Was it predictable? Completely. The audience gave me a standing ovation. Day 400. I got an unexpected email. It was from Madison Taylor. Subject: I owe you an apology. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Dear Miss Johnson, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I've been in therapy for 6 months, and my therapist suggested I make amends to people I've wronged. I owe you an enormous apology. When I came into Sunny Tech, I thought I knew better than everyone else. I thought experience was just another word for being stuck in the past. I thought efficiency meant cutting anything that didn't immediately generate revenue. I was wrong. Catastrophically, destructively wrong. You tried to set up proper systems. You documented everything. You left us instructions, and I dismissed it all as old-fashioned bureaucracy. I destroyed my father's company. I destroyed 340 people's livelihoods. I destroyed my own career. And it was all because I was too arrogant to listen to someone who actually knew what they were doing. I've learned my lesson, though it cost everyone around me dearly. I hope your business is successful. From what I've read, you're now teaching companies how to avoid becoming the next Sunny Tech. That's probably the best possible outcome from this disaster. Sincerely, Madison Taylor. I read it 3 times. Emma was visiting that evening. I showed her the email. Are you going to respond? She asked. I don't know. What would I even say? Maybe that you accept her apology, that you hope she learned from the experience. I thought about it. Finally, I typed a response. Madison, I appreciate you reaching out. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong, especially when the consequences were so severe. I hope you've learned that expertise matters, that experience has value, and that rules exist for important reasons. Those are valuable lessons, even if they came at a terrible cost.
I wish you well in whatever you do next. Consider this a learning experience and do better going forward. Best regards, Sarah Johnson. I hit send. That was generous, Mom, Emma said. She's 30 years old and her career is destroyed. She's learned her lesson the hardest way possible. What good would it do for me to pile on? Still, after everything she did to you, sweetie, she didn't do anything to me. She gave me an opportunity to prove my value to the entire industry. My career has never been better. The person she really hurt was herself. 6 months later, I was giving a presentation to a Fortune 500 company's board of directors. The CEO asked, Ms. Johnson, what's the single most important lesson from the Sunny Tech case? I didn't hesitate. Experience beats innovation every single time, especially when the stakes are measured in hundreds of millions and people's lives depend on you knowing where all the exits are. I paused for effect. You can be cutting edge and modern and efficient, but if you don't respect the fundamentals,
If you don't follow proper procedures, if you don't value expertise, eventually reality catches up with you. And reality doesn't care about your PowerPoint presentations or your innovative ideas. Reality cares about whether you followed the rules designed to keep everyone safe. Another board member spoke up. What would you say to young professionals who think experienced workers are outdated? I'd say this. The reason experienced workers seem cautious is because they've seen what happens when things go wrong. They've seen the disasters, the near misses, the catastrophic failures. They're not being rigid, they're being realistic. Learn from them, respect them, because someday you'll be the experienced worker and you'll understand why all those outdated processes existed in the first place. The room was silent. Then the CEO said, Ms. Johnson, we'd like to offer you a permanent position as our Chief Compliance Officer. Name your price. I'm still independent. I declined that Fortune 500 offer and a dozen others like it. Not because the money wasn't good, it was excellent, but because I learned something important. Sometimes the best position is being the expert everyone needs, but no one can take for granted. My firm now employs 12 people. We're expanding to New York and Los Angeles. Annual revenue hit $5 million last year. Emma is thriving at Technomex and just got promoted to Senior Compliance Analyst at age 24. Sunnytech's empty building was finally purchased by a demolition company. They're tearing it down to build condos. Madison is apparently doing okay in Arizona. She'll never work in technology again, but she's alive, healthy, and hopefully wiser. Tom is retired and quiet. His legacy is tarnished, but he has his health and his family. Me? I'm 49 years old, financially secure, professionally respected, and I sleep well at night knowing I did everything right. Every morning, I still get coffee at Pete's, even though it's out of my way now. Pete asked me last week, any regrets about how everything went down? I thought about it honestly. No regrets. I documented properly. I followed procedures. I left clear instructions. I didn't sabotage anything. I just made sure the consequences of other people's decisions were clearly traceable. That's not revenge. That's just competence. And sometimes competence is the best revenge, Pete said, smiling. Not revenge, I corrected. Justice. There's a difference. The Sunnytech building came down last month. Emma and I went to watch. As the walls crumbled and the dust rose, Emma said, It's kind of sad, isn't it? All those years of history just gone. It is sad. But you know what? Every person who was there learned something. Every company in the industry learned something. And sometimes that's what failure is for, teaching lessons that success never could. Do you think they'd do anything differently if they could go back? I hope so, but probably not. People like Madison and Tom didn't fail because they lacked information. They failed because they lacked respect. Respect for expertise, for experience, for procedures. And you can't fix that problem by going back in time. You fix it by learning going forward. We watched the last wall fall. Come on, I said. I have a presentation at Northwestern tomorrow morning. Want to help me prepare? What's it about? It's called Why Your Compliance Officer is the Most Important Person in Your Company. Should be fun. Emma laughed. Mom, you're teaching an entire generation to respect compliance professionals. That gotta feel good. It does. But you know what feels even better? What? That 340 people lost their jobs because management ignored procedures. And now thousands of people will keep their jobs because companies learned from that mistake. That's legacy. That's impact. That's mom being mom, Emma said, hugging me. The call came at 7:43 a.m. on a Tuesday, 6 months and 8 days after they restructured my position. That call changed everything. but not because it destroyed a company or ended careers or cost people money. It changed everything because it proved something I'd always believed. Experience matters. Expertise matters. Following proper procedures matters. And sometimes the best thing you can do is do your job so well that people finally understand what they lost when they let you go. My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm 49 years old. I used to keep computer companies legally compliant. Now I teach the entire industry how to do it right. And every single day, I'm grateful for that Tuesday morning call that proved I'd been right all along. Not because I wanted revenge, but because competence deserves respect. And sometimes the only way to teach that lesson is to let people learn it the hard way.